And who else is amazing is Janice Walz. She does it all. She was in Calendar Girls, and she's with the Octavo, and she Proctors, and well, you just see her all over, right? And you see a lot of her. Well,
yes.
That's all other story. So, anyway,
yes. Now I'm fully dressed. Yes.
We're talking about Proctors right now and history, and I'll tell you, these photos that she sent me were incredible. So tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so what I wanted to talk about today was kind of treasures lost and almost lost. And the reason that I chose this topic was that at the corner of State and Erie, we have the Nikolaus building.
Oh my goodness.
1820 built, 1901 reconstructed in peril.
Yeah.
In peril for modern progress. And again, our whole lives are that balance of what old treasures do we keep and value, and what new things. And again, even your Clybourne Park is dealing with that,
absolutely.
Progress in the human area. But today I want to talk about some hidden treasures that were found and some things that were lost. One of them. Now, if anybody's been in Proctor's recently and you say, where is that picture of Hal Holbrook? Well, on the historical committee, we were saying the same thing, because during the last 2 summers, they've been doing construction and putting the gold leaf on the theater. And of course, you have to move things around. And it's like, no one knew where Hal was. Well, I'm happy to report we found him.
You found Hal. By golly, you don't want to lose Hal Holbrook.
No, we don't want to lose Hal because he was certainly a wonderful, wonderful contributor.
And he would have
early
said
on
about his demise is...
Yes, greatly overrated. Yes, for
Twain.
Mark Twain. And if you sit in HH seats, those are Hal Holbrook. And again, giving money early on so that our treasure that we know as Proctors today was saved. But what I want to show some pictures of were some of the very first Proctors, and we've talked about that before.
Now, there's the arcade.
Yes,
I can't imagine. Now, from what angle
this
is
is the arcade in the 1912 Proctors.
Oh, where is that? Where was that?
Okay, so if you know where the Grog is, the Wedgwood building, the old State Theater. Okay,
State and Erie Theater.
State and Erie Theaters.
Was it Proctor's Theater?
But in 1912, it opened April 8th, 1912, and of course this is why.
Now I recognize that now.
Now we know that Proctor's came off of the Titanic, and this was the theater he was opening, which actually saved his life.
Yeah.
But in 1912, he opened this theater, and it was to test the waters of Schenectady.
To see, because Vaudeville was big.
Yes, he already had a theater in Albany, and that was successful. But he wanted to look, can I have a theater in Schenectady? And remember, he owned and ran, managed whatever, up to 54 theaters in his lifetime.
Wow.
So this is what he did. But he was a smart business person, so he tests the water first. So he opens a theater, rents it out to vaudeville and music, and it faced the Erie Canal before Erie Boulevard was filled in. So this one ran along that way. Now that opened in 1912 and ran continuously. In 1922, they built the State Theater. And the arcade that we saw, they decided to run between the Proctor's Theater and State Theater so that people could walk in this and you can shop. And here you have the New York Telephone Company right there.
I'll be darned.
So this was the first arcade. Now this was a later picture. This is actually a ticket manager, assistant manager, and this is much later in our Proctors, the one we know, 1948.
Okay, because their ticket was out in the front.
Right, the ticket was out in the front. Now this again was a picture of the early Proctors that we know. So going back to the first pictures we were looking at, that arcade. This arcade, when Proctors opened the theater that we know, December 27, 1926, this became, instead of Proctor's Arcade, it became the State Arcade. But the Proctor's part of the theater, which was then called the Wedgwood, which was called the Erie, that was destroyed and turned into a parking lot, as we know, in
because that used to be the Erie Theater.
Right,
You could walk
1963.
into State and you
right.
could go to the State Theater, or else you could go right down the hall.
Right, to the Erie Theater.
Yeah.
That was destroyed in 1963, and we know that the State Theater, leaving just a little bit of the arcade, that was raised in 1985. Okay. So those treasures are gone.
As is the Plaza Theater.
Oh yes, so many theaters around the way. But so that was his first. So now we're looking at some, again, early Proctor's pictures. So this again shows the arcade. This is in our present Proctors. This was the first, the arcade, excuse me, the facade and the marquee. Again, wonderful pictures.
1941, because I looked up those movies.
Yes, and it was 1941. And here, 1941, movies. He made the transition. He was a wonderful businessman, and which is why he did as well as he did. But he made that transition from vaudeville, the silent films, into movies. And here again, you have Key Bank. Mm-hmm. It was Citizens Bank at this time. So you have Key Bank, of course, now Key Hall. You still have Parker's. And notice, this is when Proctor's was just a storefront. Mm-hmm. So this was early, just before he took it over. Early.
Well, that is a great photo, though.
Yes. So have we gone through all our photos?
So.
Okay. Yeah. So what I wanted to just mention is one of the things, the purposes of your Proctor's Historical Committee is to, number one, take wonderful photos and receive them. So if anybody out there is cleaning out their, attic and stuff, and you come across photos, and especially of our area, the State Street area, Proctor's, whatever.
I have a photo of my dad standing in front of Liggett's.
Oh yes, right, which was right next door to Proctor's.
I'll have to pass that on to you.
Pass them on to us. We have some, Marilyn Sassy is a trained curator. So is John Schur. I mean, Marilyn teaches. John was with the New York State Museum for years. These are trained people. They know how to take care of stuff. We have Pamela Dodd, who is just continually organizing these so that when you need something, you can go and find it. Like these photos, when I said I wanted to talk about this.
You got to know where to find them. What good is a box of photos if you can't figure out what's in them?
And to do the research to find out what they are, things like this. So we have wonderful people, and Suzanne Bernard is another tireless worker. So that, number one, if people want to go through their things, we can accept things for Proctors, and we use them in our windows, things like this. And we take care of them so that they are protected for the next generation, which is why we had done the fundraiser to get that map case so we can put these posters flat.
I also want to mention too, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I wanted to mention that if you are attending a large show at Proctor's, or any show, actually, there's 2 glass cases upstairs that show a lot. Even if you don't get into the museum, which is right next to it, you can see some of the artifacts.
That is right. And again, if you're interested in history and you want to join the committee and help us have docents at some of the big events so that people can come upstairs, look into the museum, and again, we'll change it over the summer. It'll be something new when we open in the fall. But there are people who know things about the theater, and it's always fun stuff.
Take a tour. You're going to enjoy it. And
yes.
Thanks, Janice, for being here, and we'll talk about next month. I talked to you about that later. So.